The morning of April 16, 1947 started like any other in the bustling port city of Texas City, Texas. Dock workers prepared for another day of loading and unloading cargo ships at one of the Gulf Coast's most important industrial harbors. The air was filled with the usual sounds of machinery, shouting voices, and the distant whistle of trains bringing goods to and from the massive petrochemical facilities that lined the waterfront. But by the end of that day, Texas City would be forever changed by what remains one of the most devastating industrial disasters in American history. A disaster so catastrophic that it would reshape how we think about industrial safety and emergency response. A disaster that began with something as simple as a small fire aboard a cargo ship. This is the story of how a routine morning turned into an apocalyptic nightmare that claimed nearly 600 lives and left thousands more injured. How a single vessel carrying a common agricultural product became the epicenter of destruction that could be felt for miles. And how a series of decisions made in the critical moments before disaster struck would haunt survivors for decades to come. What you're about to hear isn't just another industrial accident. This is the story of the Texas City explosion, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how a perfect storm of circumstances, human error, and chemical reactions created one of the most powerful non-nuclear explosions in history. The French cargo ship Grand Camp had arrived at Texas City's harbor just days earlier, loaded with a cargo that seemed harmless enough. Ammonium nitrate, a white crystalline substance commonly used as fertilizer, filled nearly 2,300 tons of her cargo hold. This same chemical that helped crops grow across America was about to demonstrate its terrifying potential for destruction. Texas City itself was a testament to American industrial might in the post-war boom. The port handled millions of tons of cargo each year, serving the rapidly expanding petrochemical industry that had transformed the Texas Gulf Coast. Massive refineries, chemical plants, and storage facilities stretched along the waterfront, processing everything from crude oil to industrial chemicals. The city had grown rapidly during World War II as demand for petroleum products and chemicals skyrocketed. On the morning of April 16th, longshoremen began their shift at Pier O, where the Grand Camp was moored. The ship's cargo manifest showed not just the ammonium nitrate, but also small arms ammunition, machinery, and other goods destined for post-war reconstruction efforts in Europe. It was exactly the kind of mixed cargo that moved through Texas City every single day. At approximately 8 o'clock in the morning, dock workers noticed something troubling. Smoke was beginning to seep from the number 4 cargo hold of the Grand Camp. The smoke had an unusual reddish-orange color, and it was growing thicker by the minute. What started as wisps of vapor quickly became a more noticeable haze drifting up from deep within the ship's captain, Charles's hull. The ship de Guillabon was immediately notified of the situation. Fire aboard a cargo vessel was serious under any circumstances, but with thousands of tons of various materials packed tightly in the holds below, this demanded immediate attention. The captain ordered his crew to investigate the source of the smoke, while dock workers continued their operations nearby. What they found in cargo hold number 4 would set in motion a chain of events that no one could have predicted. The ammonium nitrate, that seemingly innocent white powder, was smoldering, but this wasn't an ordinary fire that could be doused with water. Ammonium nitrate, when heated, begins a chemical process that becomes increasingly difficult to stop. The crew's first instinct was to use the ship's standard firefighting equipment, but Captain de Guillabon made a fateful decision that would later be scrutinized by investigators and historians. Instead of using water to fight the fire, he ordered the cargo holds to be sealed and steam to be pumped in, hoping to smother the flames without damaging the valuable cargo. This decision, while seemingly logical at the time, created exactly the wrong conditions for dealing with burning ammonium nitrate. The steam increased the temperature and pressure within the sealed hold, accelerating the chemical decomposition process that was already underway. Rather than extinguishing the fire, the steam was feeding it, creating a pressure cooker effect deep within the ship's belly. Meanwhile, word of the fire began to spread throughout the port. Dock workers continued loading and unloading other vessels nearby, while curious onlookers gathered to watch the unusual orange smoke billowing from the Grand Camp. Many people had never seen anything like it before. The thick, colorful smoke rising from the harbor created an almost mesmerizing spectacle against the clear morning sky. Local fire departments received the call and began responding to what they believed was a standard ship fire. The Texas City Volunteer Fire Department, along with firefighters from nearby facilities, rushed to the scene with their equipment. These brave men had no idea they were racing toward what would become their final call. As the morning progressed, the situation aboard the Grand Camp continued to deteriorate. The orange smoke grew thicker and more intense, and the temperature within the sealed cargo hold continued to climb. The ammonium nitrate was now undergoing rapid decomposition, breaking down into nitrogen, oxygen, and water vapor. This process released enormous amounts of heat, creating even more pressure within the confined space. Port officials faced a critical decision. Should they attempt to move the Grand Camp away from the crowded harbor or continue efforts to fight the fire where she sat? The ship was moored among other vessels, storage tanks, and industrial facilities. If something catastrophic happened, the damage could be immense, but moving add enormous risks. The clock burning ship also carry was ticking, and with each passing minute, the chemical reaction within the cargo hold was Grand Camp's accelerating beyond anyone's control. The stage was being set for an explosion that would be heard over 150 miles away, felt across multiple states, and remembered as one of the most devastating industrial disasters in American history. What happened next would change Texas City forever, and the lessons learned from this tragedy would reshape industrial safety practices around the world. The morning that started with routine dock work was about to become a nightmare that survivors would never forget. At 9:12 in the morning, the first tugboat arrived at Pier O with orders to move the Grand Camp away from the congested harbor. Captain de Guillaume initially resisted, believing his crew could still control the situation. But as the orange smoke continued to pour from his vessel, the urgency became undeniable. The decision was made to relocate the burning ship to a safer position in the harbor. However, the process of moving a large cargo vessel is not something that happens quickly. Tugboats had to be positioned, lines secured, and careful coordination established between multiple crews. All of this took precious time. And time was the one thing they didn't have. The chemical reaction deep within the sealed cargo hold was accelerating with each passing moment. By 9:30, spectators had begun gathering along the waterfront and on nearby vessels. The unusual colored smoke created an almost carnival-like atmosphere, with people pointing and taking photographs of what they believed was simply an interesting harbor fire. Children from nearby schools pressed against windows to get a better view. Office workers stepped outside their buildings to see what was causing the commotion. The Texas City Volunteer Fire Department had arrived on scene and was preparing their equipment. Chief Henry Baumgartner assessed the situation and ordered his men to begin laying hose lines. These firefighters, like everyone else present, had no understanding of the true nature of what they were facing. To them, this was another industrial fire, something they had trained for and handled before. What they couldn't see was the incredible transformation taking place within the Grand Camp's cargo hold. The ammonium nitrate was now decomposing at an exponential rate. The sealed compartment had become a massive pressure vessel, with the temperatures climbing well beyond the critical threshold. The white crystalline fertilizer was converting into superheated gases at a rate that defied comprehension. At approximately 9:45, dock workers reported hearing strange sounds coming from deep within the ship. Described as groaning or popping noises, These were likely the sounds of the vessel's steel bulkheads straining under the immense pressure building below decks. The Grand Camp herself was beginning to feel the effects of the chemical storm brewing in her belly. Captain de Guillaume made another critical decision during these moments. He ordered his crew to abandon their attempts at fighting the fire and instead focus on evacuation procedures. Some of his men were already showing signs of distress from inhaling the toxic fumes that were now billowing more intensely from the ship. The captain himself was beginning to understand that this situation was beyond their control. But evacuation of the immediate area proved chaotic and incomplete. Many dock workers continued their duties on nearby vessels, either unaware of the growing danger or believing they were at a safe distance. The fire department continued setting up their equipment, determined to fulfill their duty to protect the port and its facilities. The tugboats finally began their slow work of repositioning the Grand Camp. The massive ship started moving away from the pier, black smoke now mixing with the distinctive orange vapor to create an ominous cloud above the harbor. Those watching from shore could see the vessel's outline through the haze as she made her way toward what everyone hoped would be a safer location. At 10:30, the situation took another turn for the worse. The ammonium nitrate had now reached a critical mass of decomposition. The sealed cargo hold had become a bomb waiting to explode, with pressure levels that exceeded anything the ship's structure could contain. The groaning sounds from within the vessel had become more frequent and more intense. Fire Chief Baumgartner received word that additional emergency units were being called in from surrounding communities. The scale of the response was growing as officials began to realize this was no ordinary harbor fire. Radio communications crackled with updates and requests for more equipment, more personnel, and more expertise in dealing with chemical fires. Meanwhile, the Grand Camp continued her slow journey across the harbor. The tugboat crews working to reposition her had no idea they were guiding what had essentially become a floating explosive device. Every minute that passed brought the chemical reaction closer to its inevitable conclusion. Workers at the nearby Monsanto chemical plant had stopped their operations to watch the spectacle unfolding in the harbor. The massive industrial facility, with its maze of pipes, tanks, and processing equipment, sat less than 1,000 feet from where the Grand Camp was now positioned. If something catastrophic happened to the ship, the chemical plant would be directly in the line of destruction. At exactly 9:12 a.m., just as the morning shift was reaching full activity across the industrial complex, the unthinkable happened. The ammonium nitrate in the Grand Camp's cargo hold reached its final stage of decomposition. In an instant, 2,300 tons of what had been harmless fertilizer converted into an explosive force equivalent to thousands of tons of TNT. The explosion that followed defied human comprehension. The Grand Camp simply vanished in a massive fireball that rose nearly 2 miles into the sky. The shock wave that radiated outward from the epicenter moved faster than sound itself, crushing everything in its path with the force of a man-made earthquake. The Texas City explosion stands as a stark reminder that industrial progress comes with profound responsibility. That morning, in 1947, a combination of inadequate safety protocols, misunderstood chemical properties, and critical decision-making failures transformed routine harbor operations into one of America's deadliest industrial disasters. Today, the lessons learned from this tragedy continue to shape how we handle hazardous materials, ensuring that such devastation never occurs again.